Good morning, everyone. Good morning, and welcome back to another PorscheCooled podcast. Today we have another episode of the PorscheCooled Owner Stories. The PorscheCooled Owner Stories, as you know, is where I am connecting up with other Porsche owners, not necessarily 911s, if you own any type of Porsche. So we catch up here on the podcast. This one's published every Tuesday, and we talk about your Porsche journey, how you got into a Porsche, where it all started, what you're driving now, what you want to drive, what research you did, just to help other people who listen to the podcast and hear other people's journey into the Porsche world. It doesn't matter if this is your first 911 or first Porsche. It doesn't matter if this is your 10th Porsche. We like to talk to a variety of people. I think it's great. I think the listeners really enjoy it. I've had lots of positive comments. Wow, in the last week, even after the last couple of podcasts, the last couple of stories earlier back with Justin and Ajmal. So they've been really well received. So thank you for all the comments and all the DMs that people have been sending me. Much appreciated. It's really good to get the feedback. We don't get a lot of feedback on the podcast. Podcasts are a bit of a strange thing. They're not like YouTube, where you get, people can leave comments. So it's a bit harder, which is why I say if you like the podcast, go to Apple Podcasts. It seems to be the metric in the industry. Go to Apple Podcast. You can just click a star rating. So you give us a star rating from 1 to 5. If you have the time, a quick review always helps, and that helps us get seen by Apple, by other podcasts that Apple send. Actually, Apple don't send the podcast out. It's sent out by Podbean, who I'm actually on. But Apple basically is the industry standard. It's still the number one place where people listen to podcasts. It's basically Apple Podcasts and Spotify. So any rating or review really helps us there. But I do really like the personal messages that I've been getting from you guys from all around the world, from Sweden, from Australia, from the US, everywhere. So it's fantastic. From Poland. So that's really encouraging, and it helps us keep this podcast going. As you know, we also have a Patreon page, which is PorscheCooled. You just search PorscheCooled at Patreon, and you can become a PorscheCooled member. It just helps support the podcast. It helps us. It's going to help us to get new equipment. There's quite a long list of equipment that I have already on a wish list, and I want to get some of that new equipment. Maybe get Steve a microphone for Sydney, get some new recording device, a new Zoom recording device. Zoom, the Japanese company, not the video chat that we use. So this podcast today, like I said, is PorscheCooled Owner Stories. We're going to be talking to Craig. Craig is from Sydney, Australia, another Australian. Craig has bought I believe it's his first 911. I'm going to let Craig explain that and tell everyone what he's bought. So Craig should be almost ready waiting on Zoom. So I'm going to connect Zoom now. I'm going to connect up with Craig in Sydney, Australia. It's Friday morning here in Bahrain, and it's Friday night in Australia. So we'll get Craig live, and we'll start the PorscheCooled Owner Stories with Craig from Sydney, Australia. Okay, welcome back, everyone. Welcome back to PorscheCooled Owner Stories. Today we have another very passionate Porsche owner. We have Craig coming all the way from Sydney, Australia. Craig has actually just purchased his first 911. I won't say too much about it now, so we'll let Craig tell us all about it. Hi, Craig. How are you?
Good, Michael. Thanks for having me on your program.
No, thanks for coming on. I know you've been wanting to come on it, and I have a few people that I'm sort of putting on hold, and I know people probably think I'm forgetting about them, but I did remember that you did want to be on it. So I'm glad you could do it it's a Friday night there in Sydney, right? So it's
that's right. Yeah,
it's your relaxed time.
It's just after 7 o'clock. It is. Yeah, this is relaxing for me, so it's good.
So I think most of the listeners really like to hear about how and we'll say this is your first 911, which I think we already said.
It is, yeah.
But most of the listeners like to know about your first memories of Porsche, basically. Like you just has Porsche always been something that you've been aspiring to, or is it just something you sort of noticed a few years ago?
No, it's definitely something I've been aspiring to for a long time. Probably the seed was planted probably back when I was a kid, actually, because I always remember my older sister talking about these Porsche turbos, and I never really. I vaguely recall actually I think she was showing me some pictures of one. I think it was around the time, if you remember, like John Laws and John Singleton apparently used to drive them. and that's kind of
Yes.
my sort of first memory of it. But as a kid, I kind of, after that, I remember the first sort of around the same time, actually, I always remember we were away on holidays up at Foster Way, and it was pouring rain, and my parents sort of, we're at the shops and we're looking for something to keep us occupied while we're in the caravan or whatever. And I always remember my parents sort of bought me a model, and I got to choose what it was, and it was a Porsche 911.
Oh, okay.
Not that I did a really great job of it from memory. I was only about 7 years old.
Do you remember which model it was, Craig?
I think it would have been probably one of the 60s ones from memory.
Okay.
I just remember it was kind of, it was orange plastic. As back, when I was a kid and I was on holidays, I didn't have any paint or anything. I just remember it was a 911, and it was a very early model 911.
All right.
It wasn't a 35. I don't think it was a 356, but it was just something a little bit.
It might have been a 912.
It could have been a 912, Michael, absolutely. But it was definitely either a 912 or 911, that shape. But I remember it had the older shape, and I think, from memory, it kind of had the original type of wheels, the steely wheels that.
Oh, right. Yeah, so it's an early one. It's a 64 to 69 type of, probably an early 911, yeah.
Well, it would have been, because that around that year would have been, it probably would have been around mid-70s.
So
around 76, 77 probably at that time.
Right. So you got that model.
Yeah.
It's interesting what you just said then about John Laws and John Singleton, actually, because I'll just throw this in as a little bit of a bit of information about me. John Laws, to people who are not listeners from Australia, is a radio personality, very famous radio personality, and John Singleton is a pub baron now, I guess, in Australia. Both very wealthy men. Sure. John Laws used to have a farm outside of Wyong, and I went to high school in Wyong from when I was 10 to 17.
Wow,
in
okay.
Wyong. John Laws used to own a farm outside of Wyong, and when I was a kid, I used to ride my bike, and on Sundays and Saturdays, you used to see his cars because he used to come up there for the weekend, and cars I've never seen before, Craig. Like Rolls-Royce, Bentley.
Yeah.
I don't remember him driving any Porsches, but I remember they were always the cars you might have seen them in a magazine or never seen them before, and you'd see these cars. So it was always quite. There's something special about that when you're a kid, when you see these cars for the first time, and you just don't know what they are.
For sure. I was just going to say, I probably from that point, I was, growing up, I didn't get to see a lot of those type of cars.
Right.
But particularly where I lived. I lived sort of out in the burbs of Sydney and in the hills area, and sort of back in those days, it kind of wasn't until I was in my sort of later teens that the bug really hit me later on, because I remember I was going to TAFE for the trade I was doing, and this is more of my first sort of, I guess, where I got the bug for really, supercars as a genre, I suppose.
Yeah.
And I remember this guy was talking about this Lamborghini Countach, and I'd never seen one.
Yeah.
And then one day I was shopping at the local sort of shopping centre and saw these posters, and I saw the poster of, a Lamborghini Countach, and it was that classic sort of mid 80s Countach with it was the one that had the spoiler kit on it, and I just thought, oh my God, that's just the most amazing thing I've ever seen. And so then I sort of I think from that point, that's why I started getting more interested and taking more notice of those kind of cars. Not that it was very rare to see one on the road, and I think the only time I probably saw one is going to the International Motor Show at one point.
Yeah. So you made the model as a kid, or you tried to make the model as a kid, and then did you, your car journey after that, did you buy any sports cars of any type, or did you just have normal cars like me? Because I pretty much had pretty normal cars.
Just normal cars, Michael. That's right. What I could afford. I was an apprentice, apprentice sheet metal worker actually, and with the government. But I always got my P's, and a typical guy that age, first thing I wanted to do was get a car. Yeah. And so I never really had nothing really sporty though. They were Toyotas. My father was he always owned Toyotas in his later life, and always swore by them, and he still does now. Yeah. And I I followed that sort of Toyota thing, and probably the first step into owning a sports car was several years back. I had to buy a second car, and we already had a Toyota, Like it was a Camry or something. It's a family car because of I've got kids now, 3 children, and they're a bit more grown up now. But I bought a Toyota Celica, a '98 Celica, because
they were a very good
that
car.
round.
Yeah,
they were beautiful, and it was an SXR.
Yeah.
If you recall that. And I just loved it. I just thought that shape in that it was the best Celica shape. The final shape that came out after that was I didn't like as much. It was a bit more squarish.
Yeah, and I think you have to put it into perspective too. We have to put it into perspective for the listeners overseas who might not know what a Celica is. But this is a sort of car that if you lived in certain, country areas like I lived in and during the, if it's in the sort of 70s or 80s, 70s, I guess, late 70s, it was the car to aspire to. It was one of those cars that kids used to look at and go, I really want that Celica. It's a very, very cool car. It was a 2-door, sports coupe Toyota. I don't know if they were called Celicas elsewhere in the world. I know in Asia they were. I'm not sure if they were in America or if they even made it to America.
Yeah.
But
I believe so. Yeah, I think they were in America, but they were a different model. I do recall when I was in America actually seeing, pretty sure I saw one over there, 1 or 2 over there, but I don't think they were a Celica.
So that Celica kind of got you into that sports car kind of mode, right? Because it was, we have to call it a sports car. It kind of is a sports car.
It is.
So
true.
So then when did you start? And let's jump forward a few years, I'm guessing, with my story where I didn't buy one, I bought one 4 years ago. And that's my first 911, as you know, as well. So when did you start thinking about, okay, I'm seriously going to start looking and buying a Porsche?
Yeah, so for sure. So just quickly stepping back around my 21st birthday, and by that time I was hung up on Porsche. So once I sort of started seeing Lamborghinis and Ferraris, got into that, I really got into the Porsche side of it. I was around 21, but and I got to have my first ride in a Porsche around 1990. It was actually New Year's Eve on 1989, I think it was. And a friend was visiting, and he had a 928. And this friend, he called us and said, hey, come around and have a look. And so I went round in a flash, and he took me for a ride in it, and it was just amazing. It was a beautiful 928. It was probably one of the earlier model ones, but this was, I remember at the time him saying he paid like something about $80,000 for it. I was going
to say in 89, even if he had an early one, it's 10 years old at the most. I think 78 was when they were first available in Australia. So it's literally pretty much a new car. It's not that old at all.
No, I know he bought it. He did buy it secondhand, but he said, so it must have been very near new. It had the checkered cloth seats.
Oh, really?
It was a manual, which was pretty,
pretty
and it was
rare.
which is pretty rare. And I just remember him taking off up the street, and I think he hit something like 140 out of second gear or something. It just threw me back on the seat. And from that day, I was just going to say, from that day, it was like, I've got to own one of these. And I sort of set a goal for myself. I said, all right, because I was only sort of 21-ish, and I said, all right, by the time I'm 30, I'm going to own one. Well, it didn't quite work out over 9 years because with, wife coming along and children, it took 30 years before I actually got one. Yeah. But what really kicked it in sort of through that time, I'd always been interested in them, and it sort of went, the whole supercar or exotic car thing, actually wanting one, sort of went a little bit dormant for a while. And it was funny, it was only about a year or so ago, and I had and I started watching that Comedians in Cars and Coffee.
Oh, okay.
Jerry Seinfeld.
Yes. Yeah, good show.
And I started watching that, and I just got hooked again, and it just sort of reignited something in me. Yeah. And my wife and I had always discussed, like when we were getting married, actually when we first started going out together, the first, I think we started going out in sort of the October, and that first Christmas, the first gift she ever bought me was a beautiful Porsche cap.
Oh, okay.
And another Porsche called Dream Cars Porsche. And that was just the start of my Porsche book collection.
Do you still have the cap?
I don't, unfortunately. I don't know.
Because that would have been a great story, Craig. That would have been a great story. You still have the cap, and you're in the car with the cap your wife gave you all those years ago. That's a story that should be in a book somewhere.
I know. I actually think I'd left it in a friend's combi van one day when we went surfing or something. And,
Right.
it disappeared, and I was really disappointed because it was this beautiful corduroy sort of material. It was really well made.
Yeah.
But I later bought another one. But we'd sort of, she always said when we got married, when the time's right, she'd be okay for me to buy one when we can sort of afford it. And yeah.
So when you started looking after being in that 928 back in '89, were you tempted to get a transaxle? Were you tempted to get a 928 or a 944 because the prices are slightly lower in Australia? So was that a tempting thing to do?
Actually, that's interesting you say that, because I was at one stage I was looking at, and this is probably 20 odd years ago, I was looking at 924s.
Yes.
I remember I used to work because I worked at sort of Rose Hill, where that area is in sort of in the burbs, and I used to walk to Granville TAFE, and at one point I had to walk because I had an accident in my car and it was getting repaired, so I had to walk to TAFE, and I'd walk past these car yards, and I remember in this one car yard there was like two 924s, and I'm pretty sure one of them was like a GT, the GT version, and I didn't really know at that point what I was looking at. I just knew that I loved the look of that 944, and I think the 924, and what had attracted me was those the telephone dialer wheels I had on it.
Yeah, they're great.
I really
wheels.
They are. I really love those telephone dialer wheels, and it was around the price around that was around 14 or 15,000.
Yeah,
and the GT one would have been a little bit more expensive because I remember it had that. It had that in the front, in the bonnet, it had the turbo sort of the inlet, the air inlet.
Yeah, nice car. They're going quite for a lot more money today, that's for sure.
I bet they are.
Yeah,
I bet they are. So that was that, but I didn't get, I never got to see a lot of 911s except for when I'd cruise along with a friend, mate, and I used to go cruising along Parramatta Road, and we used to see some of the car yards along there. And I think you mentioned it earlier in one of your chats with Steve. I think you know talking about some of the car yards that used to be on Parramatta Road, and that have a lot of Porsches and things like that in it. So
yeah, Parramatta Road, and Steve bought his 964 on the one in going to Drummoyne, that road. So just after those car dealers that were on the left and right there.
I know the one. Yeah,
and he actually
that's where Park Road or something.
Yeah, I can't remember the name of the road.
Yeah.
So I think that's where he bought his first 964 from one of those dealers. And I remember going out to one of those dealers years ago and looking at something. I don't think it was a Porsche. It was something two-door. I can't even remember what it was. They're always a little bit shady, those dealers. I never really thought they were.
I know.
You never really know what you were getting.
Yeah, exactly. And I remember that was probably the first opportunity I ever had to actually sit in a 911, because I remember sitting in one and chatting.
Well,
to the guy.
That's the turning point, isn't it? That really is when you sit in one. And I have to, thinking back, I think actually the first 911 I sat in Boxsters. I sat in a Boxster before. So that was only 98 or something. But the first 911 I sat in was actually Steve's 964 that he had. 964.
Nice. That was nice.
Carrera 4, the white.
I like the 964.
Yeah, and that was... And even the first drive in it, I remember it. I remember how much it pulled. I remember the sound of it. I remember the typical air-cooled thing when you're in an air-cooled, if you haven't been in one before, that smell of the leather, that smell of the fuel, which you don't get in a 997, do you? You don't get that same impact.
No, you don't. But interestingly, I mean, the one that I end up buying, it has a smell about it, but it's not a fuel smell, but it's, I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's because it does have the full leather kit.
Yep. So let's get onto that actually. Let's get onto that because we're jumping forward into the details, which I want to cover all that with you. So So how many years ago you said you started looking for your? I think you bought your Porsche 911 this year. Was it this year you bought it or last year?
I did, and it was this year, and it was only and the decision to buy it, to start actually seriously looking, was only really around last year. And then I'd started saying to my wife, I'd like to start thinking about it. And what happened was earlier this year we decided, because we bought we had a family car. It was a BMW X3. It was a 2011 model. We've still got an absolutely beautiful car, and we started looking at, well, we need to maybe think about updating it. But the price to update to another X3, you were looking at spending about another 60 odd grand. And I thought, well, we went and looked at one and went to the dealership, and of course, sales guys were quite keen to start, as they always are.
Of course.
And but we're looking for a changeover for a new one or a good second-hand one. You're still looking 60, 70,000 at least. And so we decided, we wouldn't, we'd sort of hold off. And on the way home, my wife had said to me, she said, well, you could always think about, we just get something cheaper, and that way you can get your Porsche a bit sooner.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh, that's not a bad proposition. So we chatted about it a bit more. And to be honest, I couldn't see any reason why we needed really to trade up, because
yes,
these days, a lot of, car manufacturers and, all the ads and that, you kind of feel like, oh, I should be trading up to get all the latest and greatest. But this one's it was diesel. The X3 is a diesel. It drives absolutely beautifully. It's only got 125,000 kilometres on it, which is nothing for a diesel.
Yeah.
And it doesn't cost us that much, and there's nothing wrong with it. So we decided to keep it, and I started looking more seriously at the 911s, and that's when I sort of really I started jumping onto YouTube. And I think that's where I really came across yourself with you were doing all the YouTube videos before you started doing the podcast. And I was listening to yours and James at Auto Amateur. I started watching his videos. And
so did you have something, did you know what you were looking for then? Were you just, so you're watching YouTube, you're looking at forums maybe, you're watching, James and me and other people, and did you think, okay, I want a 996, I want an air-cooled? Did you have an idea of what you wanted?
Yeah. For me, I think it was more, I knew probably an air-cooled was probably going to be out of the question, price-wise, because they were starting to creep up. So I was looking at the 996 initially, and I was trying to get my head around the fried egg thing, and it did start to grow on me, and I was looking at this one and that was on car sales for quite a while, and it was a really nice sort of, probably a similar blue colour to the one I have now. But it, it had the nice Porsche stripes on the side, like you have on yours.
Yes.
And I kept looking at that. I'd love to buy that. And I think at the time, he wanted about 42,000 for it. But I knew it probably wasn't. The timing wasn't quite right. And as I looked at more and more, and probably by the time sort of this year came around, and sort of early March, I happened to be looking again on, because I started looking at car sales every day virtually.
Yeah, which you do.
And the one I bought, you do. You just start to become hooked, and I'm starting to read a lot more about them. And I was reading about these infamous issues with the two. But the one thing that did stand out, I remember looking at the 997s, I think, and they were a little bit cheaper dearer at the time than the 996. And I'm thinking, I really would love to get, because it's got the more round, back to the normal, the traditional round
front
headlights.
Yeah,
and the new body styling. I loved the fact that they had the newer, slightly new body styling, and
So what did you buy? We've held it out for long enough, and we haven't really told people what you buy.
You might have to edit some of this.
So what did you buy, and what color, and let's just go through the specs of your car and what you bought. So then we'll grow on from. We'll talk about
so
that.
I ended up buying a 997 Series 1 Carrera 4. It's not the S model. It's midnight blue, and it has the sand beige interior, which were two colours that I really always kind of colour combination I really liked. Yeah, so, and that's one of the reasons why I kind of jumped at it.
How many, I didn't realize it was midnight blue, I thought from your Instagram, and I'm just looking at it now, I thought it was a brighter blue. It's so weird, but I can see now it is actually midnight blue. It's one of my, I have to say, Craig, it's one of my favorite 911 colors, the midnight blue. I think it's a great color. I really do think it's a great color. And I see a few of them here in Bahrain, and mainly they've got red interior. As I always say, it's blue with red. But I think the tan...
I don't mind the red interior.
Yeah, I think I like the half and half interior when the dash is like on the 993s where it's black and then it's tan.
Yeah, that's it's a bit nice.
Half and half, which is what they're doing in... 991s have it as well here. But I think you're right. I think, tan is not always a color that, and I'm talking about locality here with Australia. It's not a colored interior that a lot of Australians go for.
I noticed a lot of black.
Yeah, and this is the thing that listeners have to realize, and I this is probably the same in other countries, that most people buy black on black. So You know, if you find a car that's midnight blue with tan or midnight blue with red or some other color, it usually sits there for a bit longer and usually, you know, you might have a bit more bargaining power, possibly, right? So what options did so yours is a Carrera 4. Carrera 4, how many years was that available for, the Carrera 4? Do you know?
I'm not sure. I think, I'm not sure how many years it was for. I should look. I've actually got that Essential 997 book. It would tell me, but I'm not. I think it might once because I think the S model started to come in maybe later. Mine's a 2005 model or MY. It's a manufactured year 2006.
I think I think the Carrera 4 and 4S, were they launched at the same time in the 997? I know with the 996 it's a little bit different because they had the Carrera 4, they discontinued it, and then they brought out the Carrera 4S. But I think with the 997 they ran together, right? There was Carrera 4 and Carrera 4S, or they...
I think you're right, but I'd need to check because I remember... it's one you don't see many. There's not a lot. No. They're either an S or a Carrera or a Carrera S. So yours is a Carrera.
Yeah.
So I have the Carrera 4. I mean, the beauty of the Carrera 4 is that it has the wider body.
Yeah.
Which is really appealing. And I always just like that sort of that combination, you know, with
there is.
I actually get a lot of comments.
Yeah, sorry, go on.
People about it. You're right.
Yeah, no, there is something really appealing about that. I'm looking at your pictures now, but there's something really appealing about the rear. And when I met up with Nick, who was in the first owner stories in the UK, he had the 4S. Yep. And, you know, as I said in that podcast, when you're sitting there compared to mine, and you know it's wider and you see it when it's parked, but it wasn't until I was in the passenger seat and I looked out that the rear mirror, the side mirror, and then you see the flank, and it just looks, it looks so much bigger, Craig. Like it's quite, it does. For me, you know, driving my car and not having drinks, the first thing I noticed was like, wow, that is very cool how wide it is.
I think it's only something like 42 millimeters wider.
Is it? It looks a lot more, doesn't it?
Which doesn't seem, that's right. It's amazing how much that 40 or so millimeters makes, if I'm correct. Because I remember looking it up. What is the difference between the two?
Now, Craig's Instagram, for everyone that wants to know if they want to look at this while I'm talking about it, is it's actually very similar to one of my Instagrams, actually. That's where I get confused. It's P997 dot and 1 spelt O-N-E. So
that's right.
Have a look at Craig's Instagram because he's got lots of pictures of his car on there and you can sort of look at it if you're listening to the podcast now. But what other options did it have, Craig? Did it have a sports exhaust or anything, or is it pretty standard like mine?
It was pretty standard. Like yours, Michael, no sports exhaust, but it did come with it came with the PASM. I think that was an option at the time.
Yeah, that was expensive option.
And the full leather. It had the full leather,
which interior. Is really nice. Which is a really good option.
It is, and I think they put an aftermarket Bluetooth kit in it.
Oh, okay.
I still don't know exactly what brand it is, but I think it's under the seat part of it.
Oh, it doesn't come up in the screen. So it's not Mobridge. It's not the one that most people use.
No, it's nothing like that. I think it's quite old. I can stream just my music from my Apple device to it, but it won't play Spotify or anything like that.
But can you take calls
I've still got
on
the
it?
old PC.
Can you take phone calls?
Yes, I can.
Okay. I can. So at least you've got some functionality. Yeah. Mine, as you probably remember listening to, has the extended telephone kit. I don't even know what that involved, but it has the SIM slot. Does yours have the SIM slot? Which I did say previously.
Yes, I think it does.
Which I was using.
Is that in the PCM?
Yeah, it has the little SIM slot in the PCM.
Does.
And I tell you what, Craig, when I first bought the car, I got that SIM from Optus. I put it in there and it worked flawlessly. It was perfect.
Oh, brilliant.
Until that one day when I came back from overseas and Optus and Australia had turned off 2G. So now it doesn't work anymore because it was actually a 2G chip, which was really annoying.
I remember you talking about it. Yeah.
But I did find something online. There is a company, and I'm trying to look for it now and I can't find it, of course. There is a company that you can... Somehow they'll send you a SIM and it's in the UK and it'll work. And I don't know what they do, but it somehow makes the 2G still functional.
Oh, right.
But I don't know whether it's out. Yeah, I don't know whether it works in Australia or they say it's worldwide, but I'm not sure. And I can't find the link for it now, of course. So I might put it in the description of this podcast, but I can't actually find it. That's
interesting because I was looking at there's that the old conundrum with the PCM unit. You know, do you swap it out for a different head unit? You know, an aftermarket. Yeah, I see you shaking your head there, Michael. I kind of agree with you. I think I like to keep it authentic, and I think there's so much talk about it and people with different opinions, and you just don't know what's the right answer. But I'm happy with the sound of it. You know, it's got the Bose. You know, it's got the full Bose.
Okay, so your car has a few options then. So it has Bose, it has PASM, it has full leather.
It has PASM. It does.
Yours is a Tiptronic,
Sunroof.
right? And you have sunroof.
It is, yeah.
Yours is a Tiptronic, which we'll talk about in a second.
Sure.
So it is pretty highly optioned. Doesn't have the Porsche Sports exhaust, no?
No Porsche Sports exhaust.
What other options? Is there anything else? Have you got xenon headlights?
Yes, I do. It's got the xenon headlights.
Okay.
It's got, just trying to think if there's anything else that's kind of, it has the sunroof, which I like. I don't use it that often, but it works nicely. I don't have any issues with it. I know. Yeah. I think some people prefer not to have sunroofs.
Yeah, it's a bit of a purist thing. You know, it's like manual, it's like Carrera 4, it's like Cabriolet. I mean, it's this silliness that people think that it's not, you know. I mean,
that's right.
Mine has a sunroof. I probably would have preferred a non-sunroof, but that's because I just worry that it's going to break down, because the one in my Audi that I had actually broke down. You know what I mean? And they're expensive to fix, or it just used to open on the freeway. So I kind of worry about those things more than the purist side of it.
Yeah.
I actually never open my sunroof though, and I think I have to, because I mean my car's sitting for a long time now, but when I was driving a lot, I never opened it. And I think the thing is you do have to open it, because they do actually get a little bit stuck after a while.
So Steve hasn't gone down to sort of look at it for you, or can he? He doesn't have a spare key or something?
Yeah, he's going to. Unfortunately, because of COVID happening so quickly and unexpectedly, I was actually supposed to come back to Sydney in March for Easter. Pre-Easter, we were coming back. We had a ticket and everything, and we just couldn't do it, obviously, because we were stuck here.
That's so frustrating. Well, I bought mine. I actually bought the 997 just as COVID was kicking in, and I bought it from a guy in Melbourne, and I'd flown down just when things were starting to tighten up. I remember going to Melbourne, hadn't gone into full lockdown, but I think it was only a week later that they closed the borders. So I flew down for the day to look at it, and even then you could see it was a lot quieter around Melbourne. I had a friend pick me up who lived he lives over in Warrnambool. And he came and picked me up from Tullamarine, and it was so much quieter around Melbourne.
Did you get an inspection done in Melbourne, or you just trusted your eyes and you did get a PPI?
No, I went for a PPI, and I think I recall, Michael, I think I probably learnt that from yourself.
Yeah, I'm a fan of PPIs.
Look, I think it was a great thing to do. It's definitely worth doing. Fortunately, the owner he went halves in me with it, actually. He was really good.
Nice.
It is. He'd sort of said in the ad it comes with like a Vic Road certificate, but because I was bringing it to New South Wales, he said, well, I'll go halves with you for that then. Yeah. So I think the PPI was around $550.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Half of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was done by a mob in Melbourne called 9 Auto.
Okay. Yeah, I've heard of those. Yeah.
Porsche dealer, Porsche specialist. They were really good, because the owner was actually taking it there for servicing, etc. And so they'd been servicing it for probably 3 or so years.
Okay. So when you get a PPI, PPI is a weird thing, because I know some people I've spoken to in the past episodes haven't got a PPI. Like Justin didn't get one for his.
Yeah,
Ajmal in the UK didn't get one for his.
Yeah, I noticed Justin said he didn't. But
yeah, Justin didn't, but he had. I guess the person had done a service just recently, and the service had things that had to be done on the car or had been done to the car. So that, I guess, if you don't want to spend the money to PPI, if it's had a major service before that and the dealer's been very comprehensive and listed things that have to be done, I guess that kind of covers you a little bit. But the PPI, you have to ignore some things, and you have to realize that some things aren't that important, which is hard when you're buying. So did yours show up anything major?
Nothing major, because one of the things that, firstly, when they were selling the car, they'd already spent about $7,000 on a prior, putting new front shocks, Hasm shocks.
Oh, okay.
They changed out the control arms on the front.
Wow.
They'd also done it had a new alternator put in it because the 997s, those earlier ones, were synonymous for having issues with the alternator. They pull a lot of current on start, and there was a problem with the wiring loom, which needed to be fattened up. There was a bit of an aftermarket fix for that, which was done as well.
I haven't heard about that because my car is the same year as yours, I think. Mine's an 06. Yours is an 06, right?
Yep.
So we've got the same.
It's manufacture year 06. It was classed as a 2005 model.
Oh, yours is 205. See, mine's a 06 model. So mine's end of 06, I think, towards the end of 06.
So mine's an 05, 06, like 05 MY06.
So your intermediate shaft, your IMS bearing in your car, is that the change one? Which mine when they check the engine number is the newer one, which can't be replaced.
Yes, me too. I was the same, and he called that out in the ad because that was one thing I noticed a lot of, especially 996 ads. IMS bearing not fixed or whatever, and he'd specified the IMS bearing is not an issue. He'd given the engine number, so I ran that and also cross-referenced that. I'd seen some other articles online, and sure enough, the engine number came. It was outside of the problematic one, so it does have the bigger bearing in it. So that was really good to know. And the other thing, of course, was the bore scoring, which I've done a lot of research into, and it's unfortunately it's a very overstated problem depending on where you are. I think there's been a lot of damage done by some of these places. I remember reading stuff, seeing all the videos from the mob in North America, Flat Six Innovations, I think they are. And look, I did notice that a lot of their clientele comes from North America, and bore scoring is kind of a natural thing that happens in most engines anyway. I sort of confirmed this with a friend of mine, and obviously the 997, because of the design, obviously is a bit more prominent. Yeah. But I think a lot of these horror stories you see is where the car's been probably tracked, really been maybe driven hard when it's not warmed up properly and things like that, and that's all going to cause issues. I mean, I'm not an expert in it, but I had a lot of opinions about it. Mine did come back. I got a bore scope done by Nornight Auto as well. It had some mild scoring, and that the comments were it was consistent with just the amount of kilometres on the car. So it was a high kilometre car, 170,000. 170,000
kilometres.
Yeah.
But
and it goes beautifully.
But a good maintenance history.
Yeah,
well maintained.
Had a really good maintenance history all the way from the beginning. Well maintained. So he'd sent me all the service history, but I still proceeded with the PPI anyway because I felt, it's money well spent.
Yeah.
And back to your original question, there was no major issues called out, but geez, they're very. There's so much detail that they go through. They're very, very picky. And I remember I got the results from the PPI the day before I flew down to actually drive it and look at it properly.
Yes.
And I went, oh my God, this car's like, it's because there was a few things I talked about on the interior, and I thought, wow, this is for a 15-year-old car. This is great. The interior was very surprising. Yeah, there's a few little tiny nicks here and there, which you would expect and you could see some areas that had been touched up in the interior, but overall, you've got to be realistic. It's a 15-year-old car. It's been through a few owners.
Yeah, true. How many owners? How many owners, Craig?
I think there was 3, maybe 4.
Okay, that's not bad.
I tried to look because there was in the Porsche manual, they all filled out. It was filled out the owners. Each owner would fill out the details. And one was kind of looked like it had been to a family trust or something. So I think that's where it looked like there was a couple more owners, but it may be under the same family. But to me, as long as the thing was mechanically sound, I didn't have a lot of options budget wise because it wasn't like I had a lot of it's the old beggars can't be choosers. But
the thing is, when you found the car, it was in the colour you liked, so that was a plus. It's in the interior you liked.
Yep.
When the PPI, did that give you any leeway to negotiate the price? Because some people use that to negotiate the price, or you just thought it was actually quite reasonable?
Look, I think off the bat, when I first contacted him I felt the price was very reasonable because I think they wanted originally, I think he was advertising around 60, 65 or 66,000, and I kept watching it for a while, and then it dropped.
Okay.
And I think I was lucky because it just before things started, they started to creep up in price because they are now, as you know yourself, they're starting to go up a little bit.
That's a really if you got it for anywhere near 65, that's a really good price, Craig.
Well, even better, I got it for 62, Michael.
You got it for 62. Well, then that's a really good price because people listening should realize that like 996 Carreras with high miles. I saw one come up today and it's 69. You know what I mean? So, the fact that yours is well optioned, I still think being a Tiptronic, and I want to talk to you about that, but being a Tiptronic, it deters some buyers, but there's other people who actually choose that they want a Tiptronic because they want their wife to drive the car. They want it.
Well,
they still
that's
want
exactly me.
Yeah. Is that how it was with you?
Myself.
Yeah.
It was, Michael. Yeah. I've never really owned manual cars. I've driven them and I can drive manual, not that great. A good mate of mine bought a 944 several years back, and I'd driven that several times and enjoy it. But for me, I think it was more about, getting the 911. I get that, it's a driver's car, and having a manual makes it kind of the ultimate driving car, which I appreciate. But I think at the time, I wanted my wife to be able to drive it because she's never really driven manual.
Yep.
And I just enjoy just being able to cruise in it. Yeah, I like to still hit hard corners and things like that. I'm getting a little bit better at that. I don't kind of plan to track the car. Maybe not race anyway. At least I wouldn't mind just putting it on the track just for to have it like the Porsche Club have sort of days like that, which would be really great. But so the Tiptronic, and I knew the Tiptronic in the Series 1, it's not as good as the new revised PDK in the Series 2.
I'm not that familiar with it, so I can't really criticize. I'm not that familiar with it.
Because yours is manual too, isn't it? So, and I sometimes when I do drive it, I think, it'd be quite fun to sort of be able to just go through the gear changes rather than. And I do play around with the Tiptronic sometimes, but generally I just like cruising around in it and going through some local sort of nice windy roads and sort of mucking around with it that way. So.
But you still get a great feeling, right? Even though when you're on the twisties and the Tiptronic, you still get that feeling of the weight transfer. You still get that feeling of that 911, that history of the 911, which every time I get into the car, it's that thing, isn't it, Craig? You get into your car, especially for me when I've been away for a long time and I'm trying to get rid of that tank of fuel because my car's been sitting there for a while, and I take it for a drive over the bridge and I go a bit, probably normally go up to the old pack just to get some miles and come back to the city where I live. And it's just, you forget how good it is. You know what I mean? You really do. You'll
love it, Michael, once you come back and jump in it again. Because I look forward to it. I don't drive it much during the week unless I have to. Yeah. I'm working from home a lot, like most people. I work from home a lot at the moment, and my wife takes the other car to work. And sometimes if I have to go out for something, I'll take the Porsche out.
Yeah, it's a good excuse. Good excuse to go for a drive.
It is. And every time I get into this car, and it's funny, my daughter always hassle around and said, have I mentioned how much I love this car? She says, yes, Dad, you told me. And she, they all love it, but my younger daughter, she always likes to come in for a spin when I go for an afternoon cruise. My wife enjoys it, but she really likes to sort of go for a drive somewhere, have a coffee or whatever, or the Porsche Club drives. But if I feel like going for a drive in the afternoon, my younger daughter usually she loves jumping in and coming for a cruise, she loves it when I put my foot down.
That's the thing, though, isn't it? That's the thing about a 911. You know what I mean? Like once you buy one, you realize why didn't I do this earlier? Why didn't I do this sooner? Why have I waited so long? Right.
Exactly. And I think that's a good message for people too, Michael, because I'm in my sort of early 50s now. I think, and you see, I know so many people, that were, friends, and a lot of them sort of quite hung up on sort of, preparing for the future and making sure, investment properties and things like that. And,
yes.
Which is fair enough. I mean, it depends on what sort of, you got to look after your retirement, but I think you got to find a balance. And sometimes you just got to go, you know what? Bugger it, I'm just going to do it.
Yeah.
And because you never know, you'd never know. I mean, I'm not pessimistic or anything, but you just might not be around to enjoy that as much in your later years. You may not, either health-wise or for, other reasons, but, sometimes you just got to really, make the most of life as you have at the moment.
And the 911 really does help that. It really does. It really puts a smile on your face. So
it does.
Since you've owned the car, okay, let's go back. We're jumping. So when you picked up the car, did you drive it from Melbourne or you got it transported up?
No, I wanted to. That was the plan. But unfortunately, COVID hit. And, COVID had already hit, but they, as I mentioned earlier, it was probably a week before I think Melbourne started going into full lockdown. And then not long after that, the border was closed, the New South Wales border. But we weren't 100% sure, and I remember once I'd gone through, because I'd agreed with the owner to sort of, because I knew I wanted a slightly longer purchase period, because initially I wasn't quite ready to buy, but he agreed to give me a slightly longer purchase period. So by the time that all came around, I was ready to go and get it. And by that time, it was like, do we take a risk of going down to trying to fly it down and drive it back, and we just didn't know. And I always remember I even rang Albury Police just to ask, what the situation was. And he just said, we're not actually patrolling the border, so at the moment, but he said, it's up to you whether you want to risk if you get sort of caught. I think it was around a $1,600 fine or something in Melbourne. Exactly. And so anyway, I basically, cut a long story short, I ended up having it transported.
Okay.
Back.
Is that expensive?
Not before it was a bit, unfortunately. It was around $900.
Wow.
Probably not too bad, but it is. I did have a sort of a friend had a transport company, but he had he was going to offer to bring it back, but I think there was because everything had slowed down in terms of the car industry, people weren't buying cars, and so it was going to be a bit of a wait to actually get it transported up. And then one day I got a phone call from 9 Auto, because they stored it for me. Once we settled everything with the owner, they actually stored the car for me until I was ready to pick it up. And
that's really good.
And and it was. And I also was handy because I got them to a couple of minor things out of the PPI. I got them to fix. One was one of the engine mounts was gone, so they were both replaced. And the other thing was the transmission boot. The CV boot was torn, so that was done.
Okay.
But,
what does the engine mount cost to change? I'm interested in that, because I'm thinking maybe mine may need it, but I'm not 100% sure. So what does that? Is that a huge cost?
I can tell you exactly, mate. Yeah, I can tell you exactly.
Because I've heard it's about $1,000 odd, but I have a funny feeling it's more expensive than $1,000.
No, I think it was cheaper than that. I'm just actually going to look at the.
I'll just keep talking while you're looking, but the engine mount is a bit of a strange thing, because I know some people change it to aftermarket. I would just change it to Porsche OEM. But I don't think most people know if their engine mounts are gone. And I don't even know when I take my car into Autohouse Hamilton when they do the service, if that's a thing that they check each time or not, or you have to actually ask them to check it. So I know when I go back, that's one of the things I'm going to ask them to check. My car, the bump stop is torn on one of the shocks. But they say that that's not such a big issue. They say don't worry about it so much unless you're going over very bumpy, potholed sort of roads.
Sorry, mate. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Yeah, no, it's okay. So the engine mounts, which is a common thing that needs to be changed after. I mean, I guess your car's my car's, as you probably know, my car's only got 50. I don't know what it's got now. 52,
yours is quite low, isn't it?
52,000 kilometers.
That's low. That's nice. I would have liked that luxury to have a few less Ks, but I think that when it comes down to kilometers, and I've heard discussions before. I think you were talking to someone about high kilometer cars. I mean, one of your other podcasts. Yeah, and I think that high kilometers is definitely it can be a good thing. It just depends on what you intend to do with the car, I guess. If it's going to be a garage queen and you want to keep the low kilometers. And,
how many Ks have you put on your car now? How many miles have you put on it since?
About 3,000 Ks roughly. I've got the odometer set from pretty much when it arrived in the truck. Yeah, I first took it out, so there's about 3,000.
So you ship it up. You ship it up from Melbourne. Oh, sorry, we're going to look at the shocks, but we can come back while you're looking.
Yeah,
so you ship it up from Melbourne. It arrives at your house. What's the first thing you do?
Oh wow! First thing I did was pretty much jumped in and took it for a spin because it was about 11 o'clock at night. It arrived because it was a bit unexpected because I was still the person who was. I got a call from Nine Auto on Saturday morning, and they said, "Hey, I've got a guy here who's bringing up at 9:30 up to Sydney, and he's got a spare spot on his truck.
Okay.
Do you want it?" And I said, "Well, yeah," because I was getting a bit frustrated, and I'd actually been in hospital just recently, and I was like waiting for all this was happening, and so I said, "Yep, let's do it." So that was a good day, and so I arrived at 11 o'clock that night. And so the first thing I did really was we sort of jumped in it because it was quite late and went for a bit of a spin. And then the next day really was when we sort of got it out. I went and had virtually no fuel in it, so I went and got some fuel in it for a bit of a drive, and then brought it home into the driveway and started giving it a good wash and clean. And it had a lot of dust, obviously from the road trip, but it was like, oh wow, it's finally here, and I couldn't. It's funny because I'd just been out if I'd had surgery, and I couldn't do too much. I wasn't allowed to sort of lift anything too heavy, It was good. Sort of my wife and the kids sort of helping clean it all, and it was really great. It was a lot of fun.
It's a good memory, that memory when you first get it. I mean, I think I was exactly the same as you. It's like the first thing you want to do is go for a drive, which you do. I mean, I picked mine up in the morning from Scuderia Graziani in Woolloomooloo.
That's right.
And I picked it up.
That would have been great.
And then nervous as hell driving it back to where I live, which is quite close by. And then going for a drive. Actually, the first drive was going to the registration to pay the duty for the registration for the changeover. I
remember you talking about that,
which was an insane amount of money. And then going for a bit of a drive, and then the next day, it must have been a Friday we picked it up, I think. And the next day, Natasha, my wife, and I down in the garage, cleaning it.
Yes, yeah. I think that's the first thing you do, isn't it?
Every single bit of the interior and exterior. Yeah. So I think it was like 2 days of cleaning.
Yeah, that sounds about right. We spent quite a bit because cleaning the sort of the leather, and it came out really good. It's something I will probably consider getting done because where I got my windows tinted, there's a guy in Castle Hill, and he said he had a look at it. And he said, "Oh, we could probably clean that up a lot, even 100% better, with a proper." So I think it's around. He said it's probably around $450-500 to do it, but it's something I will think.
That's quite good because Justin on the previous owner's stories, he did his interior of his Cabriolet, and he got it done at Artarmon, and I think he said it was about $1,000 to do it, to refresh the leather. Wow. So I think if it's 500 odd, that's pretty good. But even like you said, even the leather, just cleaning it yourself and nourishing the leather, it surprises you how much dirt comes off it that people haven't really done it. You know what I mean?
Oh, just what we did made the world of difference with it. So, we bought some, some good, we had some other leather cleaner that we already had for our Beamer, which has leather interior as well. And I think we just used that and nourished it as well. And it did make a world of difference.
Yeah, it's worth it.
Just that alone,
Okay, so what have you done to the car since you picked it up, Craig? What have you actually added? Have you added anything? I know a couple of things, haven't you? Have you added something?
Yeah, so I've only, the two things the main things I have done, really in terms of, I suppose, add-ons is really just the window. We got the windows retinted because not long before I bought it, the tinting mustn't have been any good. So they had it, I noticed in one of the Nine Auto invoices, it actually had tinting removal. So they'd removed the tinting, so it didn't have any when it came to me.
Okay.
And so I had the tinting redone, which isn't really a performance model, obviously.
No, but that's an important one because the tinting does go a bit bad after a while. It's probably best that they did it. They took the tinting off anyway. So I mean, you get to see the car when it's off because some people have trouble taking tinting off the windows in 911s. I've heard.
Yeah, that makes sense because I know that the guys that did mine, they have to actually take the door panel off because to make sure the tinting goes right down inside. Yep. So they don't just cut it off at the windowsill. And of course,
it looks good too. The tinting's not super dark, is it? It looks just
no,
right
it's
from
not. And
the
35%, I think, was 35% they recommended. Because they said
it's weird though, Craig. Looking at a picture that you posted in, I don't know, it was October. It looks like it hasn't got tinting. There is something
that would be.
I'm kind of like I like the tinting, and mine's got tinting, as you know. But there's something still quite nice about that clear window look on some 911s. You know, when you see
I
it.
know,
And I'm looking at this photo of yours, which is kind of
I
black
agree.
and white, and it looks very, you know, it's very iconic, that clear window. You know, you see all the way through.
It is. It is nice. I have to say I did like it because you see, especially like you get a better view of the interior.
Yeah.
But one of the reasons I think with summer and the hot weather coming on, especially in Australia, you kind of need it to also sort of protect the interior a bit.
Yeah.
When mind you, my car's always undercover. The 911's always undercover. But that, and I'm quite pedantic about sort of keeping the car clean and making sure I do what I can to sort of protect the
I've noticed
interior.
that. I've noticed that from your photos. It makes me happy, actually. I like a clean car.
Yeah. Well, so do I, Michael. I was always like that with and I think I got that from my father too, because Dad always took a lot of pride in his cars.
Me too. Yeah.
And he still does. So I sort of was always like that with all my cars. I was always keeping them clean and looking after them. And now the 911, that's the penultimate for me. So it gets extra special attention.
It's a stress relief.
It is relaxing.
And so many people
I like washing it.
Yeah, and so many people say that it's like it's a nice thing to do on the weekend or of an evening and just wash your Porsche. It really does feel good.
Yeah,
clears your head.
Exactly. It does. I generally do that. Every sort of second week, I'll usually wash it because it's not fully protected in a garage as such, unfortunately, at the moment. But but it's very much it's completely undercover. So it's but you get a bit of dust blow in.
Yeah, the dust. So you're on a carport or something, are you? It's not completely covered.
Yeah, but it's secured though. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean mine gets dust as well, but I have a cover on it that's one of those interior covers on top of it. So
yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah.
So you did the window tinting. Anything else?
Yeah. The other thing, I had to get the bumper. I'd got that done, replaced, and that's to your point. I think that's all happened in October actually, because the day before I flew down is when I got the PPI. They'd made note of some damage done to the front bumper underneath, which didn't. Anyway, the owner actually called me that afternoon and he told me about it.
Right.
It had actually happened sort of during, like before I'd flown down there, but when we started sort of going through the buying process. But sort of we don't know how it's happened, but it looks like someone had driven it over like a bollard, like at a shopping centre, and it's torn the bottom underneath, and it had some damage. And what was really hard is that the whole car had been resprayed only a couple of months before, because it had been, someone had keyed it severely.
Oh, okay.
So what, according to the owner,
on the doors or the whole car?
Yeah, it sounds like they must have done it around the whole car, because it was a full respray. What the owner told me, it cost about $16,000 done by a Porsche specialist.
Okay.
Yeah, under insurance, fortunately. But that was the other thing that appealed to me, because I went, wow, this car's got a brand new paint job. It was just unfortunate this little incident happened. He did drop the price a little bit because of that.
So you've had that fixed now, right? I see on your Instagram you've got it fixed. That was quite an easy process.
Yeah, it was. I was looking around thinking, do I need to go to a Porsche specialist? And I went and spoke to some guys at Castle Hill. And,
yes.
They was it Body Tech they were, and they had a look at it, because apparently a lot of places won't. They either replace the bumper. They don't like because it need to be plastic welded. Apparently a lot of places don't like doing it. And so for me, I didn't want to spend whatever it is for a brand new bumper. It probably would have been a couple of grand, I'd imagine.
Yeah.
So it cost me a bit over $900, and they did a great job.
So they repaired the plastic.
And resprayed the bumper.
Yep. Because I'll just tell the listeners, this cut, because they can't see the picture, but the cut is literally, it's like torn the plastic underneath the radiator grill, underneath the air duct. So it's underneath where you normally scrape your car on driveways. That's actually got like a big tear in the plastic. And you're right. It would actually they'd normally just say you have to change the whole bumper out and respray the bumper, because no one would take the effort to do it. So that's a pretty good price. That's obviously a lot less than what you would have paid for a full new bumper resprayed. That's for sure.
It is, and they did a really good job. And ironically, that sort of was the first niggly thing. But then, of course, when I got it home, we had a bike fall on it. I just only had it a few days, and it just made a bit of a mark in the bumper.
Okay. Yeah.
And it was only a small thing, but it was. I thought, well, I couldn't get too upset about it because I knew I wanted to get the bumper fixed anyway.
Yeah. But it's perfect now.
But it wasn't. Yeah, it is now. So because I'd like to sort of, when the Porsche Club, gets going a bit more. Unfortunately, they cancelled their concours delegates. This it was supposed to happen on the 20th of September, and it was cancelled because of COVID, unfortunately. So hopefully next year,
Yeah, that's a good event, actually. That's one of the events I actually enjoy from Porsche Club in New South Wales, the concourse. I've been there a couple of times with Steve, but it's always good to see the other cars and to see what's available. And I went to one in Homebush once, actually. I don't know if that was a concourse or something else.
I know,
it was just
I know the one
Olympic.
you're talking about.
They had one near the Olympic. That was
They did.
fantastic. That was a really good one too. That was
I
going
looked
back
at the
a bit.
photos for it.
Yeah.
It is, that's but it's a really good thing to be a part of. Actually, the club's unfortunate that we haven't been able to do too many events, and it's kind of first in best breast at the moment because they have to limit them to the numbers. So
yeah, Bahrain has them too. For some, believe it or not, I'm a member of the Porsche Club in Bahrain, even though
you are now because I remember you talked about it, but you didn't have a Porsche. And
I joined it. Yeah, I joined it, and I thought because I would buy one here, but now because of the COVID thing and not knowing much longer we're going to be here, I haven't actually bought a Porsche here because I'm still.
It would be nice to have one.
Still on my quest for this 912.
Well, would you want the 912 though in Australia, or would you buy it and then sort of export it back?
Yeah,
import it back into Australia?
Sure. I'm not sure. The podcast today, the podcast that gets launched today in a couple of hours, the latest episode with Steve, I talk about it again because I kind of I'm talking myself out of it, but I think I've just talked myself back into it. I was looking at a 550 Boxster Spider that was for sale in Queensland because it was 35,000, and they're very rare. And then I found a couple on Bring a Trailer and Market where Ajmal bought his Porsche from. There was one sold on there.
Yep.
And they're, even on Bring a Trailer, they were getting 24,000 US. And they're pretty rare. But I noticed I got the notification this morning that it's already sold, the one in Queensland. So it's sold pretty quickly.
Up
your wheels,
quick,
they get pretty quick. Your wheels, are they 18-inch?
They're 19-inch. They're the Carrera Classics. So they were actually, speaking of options, they were an option.
They're another option, yeah. Well. That's what I was thinking.
They were an option. And I think they were about, I looked up, they were at the time, they were around about, somewhere around $5,500, I'd say.
They're a nice wheel, actually. It's a really nice wheel on the 997 because it has enough size and it's got their nice star shape. It's a really nice shape.
I love it, but I have to admit, I do like the lobster claw. I got to say, initially when I first started looking at the 997s, I thought, but it kind of grew on me. The lobster claw, you kind of get it after a while.
Yeah, I mean, when I first saw the 997 with those on it. And I think it was a Carrera 4S actually in Paddington in Sydney when they fit 2008 or something. I never liked the wheels. I didn't think I liked those wheels. I thought they looked a bit busy. But now, I mean, I'm not kidding. They're like the Fuchs wheels. They're going to be, I still say they're going to be an iconic wheel for the 911. I really like them.
Yeah, maybe you said that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think they're a really nice looking wheel.
Yeah, they are definitely, they're a different style. If you think about from memory, there's the standout ones for me were the telephone dialer style.
Yeah, beautiful.
Beautiful. The Fuchs, the original Fuchs, and then the lobster claws are really the real sort of standout. I know that there's also another one that comes on the.
There's the one on the 993 that Steve said that when he bought his 993, he priced them to get them put on. Which were the ones with all the bolts, the forged two-piece or two-piece wheel. I can't remember.
Not the Simmons.
The Simmons wheels. Yeah.
I remember you talking about that.
I think that's another.
Talking about the Simmons.
Yeah, that's another classic wheel. I think that's up there, the Simmons for sure.
It is, but I think it's one of the things you'd also see on a lot of the especially the Australian sort of people used to put them on their Commodores and Falcons. They'd low and they'd always have the Simmons and they're an expensive wheel too.
Yeah, there's a 99. They're very expensive. I think Steve told me the price. I can't remember. But there's a 993 I think on car sales at the moment that has them on. I think it's a Cabriolet actually.
Okay.
Oh no, I think it's a Tiptronic 993. There's one on there I saw it last night that has them on. But they're just too hard to clean, I reckon. I mean, I like how they look, but I think they do your head in trying to clean those.
They would. They would do your head in.
Yeah.
I find, that they're not too bad. The ones like my one, the Carrera Classics are quite.
Yeah, they're nice.
They're fairly. Yeah. They are, but especially at the back though, you've got to get your hand, because I have the sort of a cleaning, like a glove on when I'm cleaning it, and so I get my hand all the way around sort of the rim on the brake calipers and all that. And because they've got the 300 odd mil on the back, which is awesome, you got to reach a lot further underneath. It's a noticeable difference between the front and back when you're cleaning them. But
yeah, I always when I'm cleaning my wheels, I always seem to cut my hands. Every time I come up, I always come back and Natasha says, "What did you do?" I said, "I just cut my hand on the wheel again," because I always seem to be cutting it with the brake thing when you clean it.
I do that too sometimes.
Yeah. So what are you going to do to the car? Is there anything else you've got planned to add?
I think
we'll call it mods,
the main
updates.
Yeah, well, definitely. I want to get the calipers redone.
Okay.
I may do those myself because I'm. One of the things when I bought the car, I like the idea that with the 997s, they're quite they're much easier to work on. Unlike sort of the newer, like the 991s now is probably not so easy. But not that I do a lot of things, but oil changes and things like that.
Right.
And maybe flush the brakes. So if I'm going to do my own calipers, I'd have to do that, obviously.
What color? What color, Craig, are your calipers? Are they black?
Good question, Michael. I know a lot of people paint them sort of red. I think for me, they would have come standard as they would have been looked like they were the silver. They had sort of
yours is silver.
They had black sort of on the face with the Porsche. And that was one of the things they picked up in the PPI, that the brake calipers.
Yeah, because mine are black. Mine are just a standard black, and they're faded. Not so much. They're not terrible yet, but they're eventually going to have to be redone, but they're not terrible.
Apparently, I know they look good on yours, the black. But I've noticed, I was told that certain detergents we use can actually, was what makes them, the paint sort of dull up like that on those calipers. So I use a good sort of detergent that I can't remember what it is. It's a Maguire's product I use at the moment, but which I find quite good. But I don't think it's I don't know, there must be some sort of chemical that sort of is a bit corrosive.
Right.
Or something like that anyway. But
I've seen some people that have had their calipers redone though, even by professional people, and they always seem to get the Porsche script that's on them wrong, or it's the decals wrong. Or, I don't know. It's like quite tricky. I know Autohouse Hamilton told me once they had someone that did them. No doubt they're expensive.
I was going to say, I think I got, I think they quote like 9 Auto back when it was in Melbourne. They said, I think it was either going to be around 1,200 or something at the time to get them done. It was either 12 or 1,500, but I remember at the time I wanted to just spend my money getting the more important things fixed, and they were looking at trying to get the bumper done as well, which that didn't happen. And as you know, I've just had that done recently. So I think
there's plenty of videos online to do how to do the calipers too.
I've seen
there's so many. Yeah,
there are. I watched one. I was a girl doing it, and she pretty much tediously masked up everything. So she did it without actually bleeding the brake line. She did it all in situ.
Right.
But I think if I was to do it, I would pull them all apart, do sort of what James did, Moto Amateur, like he, on the 996, I think they pretty much got them all completely refreshed in a whole new kit with all the pistons and that. So I'd probably do something like that.
Yeah, that was a good job, actually, the one that James did. They did a good job on those brake calipers.
It was.
Yeah, it was, but a quality job.
Yeah, that's the thing, and you're like you really got to be careful with the logo. I suppose you can buy them, so if you're going to do them yourself, you can order the Porsche sort of stickers, and I think they're going to be out of a certain material because of the heat.
You have to get OEM for the stickers, because I noticed a 993 that was for sale, and they had the font on it and the type. It was too thin, and it looked really odd. You know what I mean? It was just done, but it looked really, really odd.
Yep.
So I think that's those little things are important. If you want it to still look OEM.
actually, that just comes to another thought I had with mods. And a little minor mod I did do. Well, it wasn't really a mod. It was just I replaced it. Was under the mud flaps underneath. You know how on the forward of the rear wheels, there's these tiny little flaps come down.
Oh yeah, the ones that get worn out.
Yeah,
the ones that stick down, the ones that come down.
Yeah,
yep,
that's the one. Yeah, they come down about that far, and I'm thinking, I end up ringing up Porsche Parramatta, and they knew exactly what it was. It's on the invoice. They're classed as rubber lips.
Yeah,
but I had them sort of the next day. Ordered them, and they were pretty cheap. They were like, I think all up for the pair, probably cheap for a Porsche anyway, but about $80, I think.
Yeah, but it's those little things, isn't it? Like that little thing. It's not that much money, but it just makes you feel better. You know what I mean?
It does. It does, because one was missing. One was missing.
Oh, okay,
yeah,
that's worthwhile.
But just getting back to that question about the if you want as well, the engine mount, it was what they weren't able to get they were able to get one OEM, but one was another non-OEM, which I said that's fine. And so they were around the non-OEM was a little bit cheaper, but it was around the OEM one was about just over $400, and the non-OEM was just under $400, but I think then they had GST on top of that.
How much labour?
Labour for that was labour for the engine.
How many
mount,
hours?
It was 1.5 hours, and that was $228.
Huh, so that's quite quick then, 1.5 hours. I thought it'd take them longer to do that. So that's actually not very long in labour. That's actually not bad.
No. So I guess, when it's up on the hoist or however they do it, it's probably a lot easier. But yeah, they're definitely all, when I looked at
that's good. That's good information. So Craig, what about anything out the mods? Because we're going to finish the podcast soon because we're over the hour mark, and we always like to keep it hour-ish.
Yeah, no problem.
But did you do a Porsche exhaust mod? Is there any exhaust mods, or yours has any a sports exhaust or?
No, it doesn't. I probably wouldn't. I don't plan to change the exhaust. I actually like the sound of it at the moment.
Okay.
But I know a lot of people. It definitely could be improved. But I guess I'm sort of one of these guys. I'm just sort of happy with it. That's my view. Is that's the way it was designed. That's the way it should be. So I've never really had any plan. I don't have any immediate plans to do that.
That's good.
But
that's good.
Brake calipers, I'll do those. I'll get those redone, probably in either the silver or maybe even the black. I'm still sort of deciding that. But I know some people even do the darker colours in yellow. Some people even got a black car and they've got yellow.
It'd be interesting to know what it actually came with if it was silver. I think silver would actually work quite well in your car, but then midnight blue with black.
That's probably going to be my first.
Yeah, I would probably say silver for yours.
Yeah, I think I agree with you.
Yeah, I'd probably say silver. I think it'd look really complement the color of the car and look good with the wheels. That's what I think.
Yeah.
So let's just go on to. I always ask people favorite driving road so far since you've been in the 911, since you've owned a 911. Where have you taken the car that you said, wow, that's great? Because I know you do a lot of Porsche Club drives, and I know you go to cars and coffee things that are happening in Sydney, which I would love to go. Which I
certainly try to. Yeah. Probably the famous.
So what's your favorite? Favorite
probably has to be at this stage when we did. It was the first one we actually did with the Porsche Club. We went down we started from Picton and then we sort of went out past, I think, through Tarm or around a lot of those bushfire affected areas because and we drove down sort of through those into the Southern Highlands and around those roads and into Marulan. We had to stop at Marulan, but then after Marulan we went into we got off and there's another like it's a state forest just after that.
Right.
And it was just amazing, these roads, and the guys were, everyone was getting to what they call a bit of spirited driving.
Yeah.
I think that's their code word for a bit of speed. And I can't remember the name of the places, but it was just beautiful backcountry, mountainous roads.
Yeah, lovely. It's like when we go down the Royal National Park, I like that drive, especially when you go back up around and you go through Kangaroo Valley and around in there and then back around to Bowral and it's really, really nice. I mean, if there's not so much traffic, it's great. But isn't it great, though? Isn't it great, Craig, when you do a Porsche Club drive or you do one of these cars and coffee drives?
That's amazing.
And you're in pack with the other 911s. There's something about it, isn't there? You just do it and you think, it's a great feeling. It really is a great feeling.
There's nothing like I know what you mean, Michael. It was awesome. It was like the first time we did it. We're pulling out of the. We all started off in Picton in the shopping centre there, and we're all coming out of the car park. It's just a line of all these. It's about 40 or 50 Porsches or something like that. And it was just amazing, And then you're sort of all following in a line, and sort of trying to keep up. once the leaders sort of start to get away, you and not to mention the fact that there's a lot of beautiful, so many different cars to look at.
Yeah, but, it's the scenery.
The one you
mentioned.
Sorry,
go on.
The scenery was phenomenal. I was going to say that you mentioned the Kangaroo Valley, so that we actually did that coming back because we worked our way across the Nowra and we had to stop and sort of picnic lunch at Nowra. And then we drove back up through the Kangaroo Valley and back into Barrel. So that was fantastic.
Yeah, fantastic.
As well,
Great fun.
It is.
Yeah.
All right. Awesome drive.
All right, Craig.
Yeah.
I'm just going to remind people to go and look at your car on Instagram. I'll just remind them I'll put it in the description of this podcast if you don't mind. But it's P997, like me, but it's .one. So you can go to that and see Craig's car. He's got lots of pictures of his cars, good pictures too. And I think it's great. I mean, I like having the PorscheCooled Stories has been really good because everyone has a slightly different car, and we haven't had a 997 Carrera 4 on yet. We've had a Carrera 4S with Nick, and now we've got a Carrera 4. So I know what it's like to be in a Carrera 4S, and it feels great because I've been in Nick's car. And we went down to Goodwood when I was back in London. So it's a great car, and I love the wide body. And like I said, being a Tiptronic is it depends on your purpose and what you want it for, and it's a great car. No matter what transmission it is, it's still a 911, and I think that's what people have to remember.
Absolutely. That's what I look at too. Yeah. Yeah.
But anyway, Craig, I think we'll leave it there. So thanks for being on PorscheCooled Owner Stories today.
Thanks, Michael. Thanks for having me. It's been fun.
Oh, it's been great. Thank you. And I hope maybe when I'm back in Sydney, we can meet up or catch up and we'll run into each other in a drive somewhere and check out each other's cars. Yeah,
that'd be good. Yeah, catch up with Justin.
Yep.
And anyone else. Yeah,
and Steve's GT3.
Steve would be. Yeah, I'd love to see that.
We won't be able to hear ourselves talk, but we can see it.
It's pretty loud. Yeah, no worries. Yeah, right. Thanks again, Michael. It's been very enjoyable.
That's great. Thank you so much, Craig. So thanks for listening, everyone. This is the PorscheCooled Owner Stories. The PorscheCooled Owner Stories is available every Tuesday. It's published every Tuesday on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, iHeartRadio, Amazon Podcast. Everywhere where you can find podcasts, just search PorscheCooled or PorscheCooled as we call it. My name is Michael Barth. This is the PorscheCooled Podcast, and we'll talk to you again soon in the next episode with Steve on Friday. Thanks for listening. Bye for now.